that would be great. So let's see, Andrew, Jojo, Lauren, Rich, Dinesh. All right. Welcome, everyone. It is 6 o'clock, so we are going to go ahead and get started with our community meeting, our community meeting number 2 of the Redistricting Advisory Committee for the expansion of Crozet Elementary School. I know that we had a couple of committee members who were going to be listening on the live stream tonight instead of being here behind the scenes with the Zoom. But Lauren, if you could watch for any more committee members, if they're popping in the waiting room and have them come in, that would be wonderful. For those of you who are here for public comment, if you are listening on the live stream, you should have an email from Stephanie Bowles from earlier today with a link to our Zoom meeting. You will be, we'll keep you in the waiting room during the presentation. And then once the presentation is completed and we are ready for public comment, we will let you in groups of 3 to give your public comment at that time. So there is a little bit of a delay between the live stream and what is actually happening live with us. So as we get closer to the end of the presentation, if you are in the waiting room, please start paying attention to the waiting room because we may be letting you in sooner than it looks like it on the live stream. So with that said, welcome again. I want to thank all of the members of the advisory committee for being here tonight, and all of the members of the public who are tuning into the live stream or here for public comment for joining us as well. And we'll start tonight with a brief overview of the process that the Redistricting Advisory Committee is going through as we make some decisions around a recommendation for the superintendent, Dr. Haas. And just one second, move one thing here. All right, perfect. So the board provided us with a study objective and some guiding principles for this edition of the Redistricting Advisory Committee. And the scope of this project is to address both current and projected overcrowding at Brownsville Elementary School. The study is limited to the Brownsville and the Crozet Elementary School districts because we are putting a 300+ student addition onto Crozet Elementary School. That is going to open in the fall of 2022. And this committee's task is to get that populated with students. In addition to the scope of the study, the board provided us with several guiding principles that we hope you see reflected in some of the scenarios that have been developed for your feedback tonight. The first is that attendance areas will serve the district for at least 3 to 5 and preferably 5 to 7 years. The second is that attendance areas should be largely contiguous. We don't want to have islands out in our districts that are totally surrounded by students who go to school in another district. That we want to be cognizant that some families appreciate the ability to walk to school, and those walk areas should be considered. And we also want to make our transportation routes as efficient as possible and minimize the time on buses to the greatest extent possible that we can for our students. Whenever possible, we will assign neighborhoods to the same school district. And if greater demographic balance can be achieved through the redistricting process, that would be a positive thing for the committee to consider. We do get questions quite often about things like grandfathering students into their school. You know, can my rising 5th graders stay instead of switching schools for just 1 year at the end of the redistricting process? And the board has decided that that will be a decision that they make, and that is one that's outside the scope of the Redistricting Advisory Committee. So when we go through our calendar, you'll see that there's going to be some time that we have in front of the board. Just to give you a quick recap, that the board approved this study scope in August, and we began soliciting feedback for committee members at that time. We had a very robust response and appreciate all the willing volunteers that came from the Crozet and the Brownsville communities. And in September, the committee was appointed and we began meeting. We've had 3 committee meetings since September, And this is the second of 2 community feedback meetings that we're having this month. Once we finish up here, the committee will have one more meeting to finalize a recommendation to the superintendent, which they will make at the end of this month. Dr. Haas, our superintendent, will bring that recommendation to the board in December. And then in January, the board will hold a public hearing and then make a decision about the superintendent's recommendation. Following that decision, we'll begin transition activities for both of our schools, and those will take place from February through August, and that will bring us up to the start of the next school year. We want to be as open and transparent as we possibly can, so we have a number of different ways that you can follow our work or provide feedback to us. Those include our webpage, which is linked here at the bottom of this slide. We live stream all of our meetings for the public to listen in on, and we also have a dedicated email address, rac@k12albemarle.org. All of those emails are forwarded to the entire Redistricting Advisory Committee, so we promise you they will see your feedback if you send it in via email. So tonight's meeting, we are going to share some 4 redistricting scenarios that the committee has developed over the course of their meetings. And then we're going to open up the floor to receive feedback from the Crozet and Brownsville communities. So I'll start by going through the 4 scenarios. One of the things that we want you to certainly be aware of as we look for these are designed to gather feedback, and they are not a committee recommendation. That you may see one of these emerge as the final recommendation for the committee, or it may be something that looks slightly different from all 4 of the ones that you see tonight. We'll be making that decision based on what we hear and population projections and things like that. Our building capacities, once the Crozet addition has been completed, are going to be 756 students at Brownsville and 668 at Crozet. So those are important numbers to keep in mind as you review the scenarios with us tonight. So one final note about the scenarios, you'll notice that we're starting with scenario number 2, not with scenario number 1. We have had multiple iterations of scenarios through the course of our meetings of the Redistricting Advisory Committee, and we wanted to, instead of renumbering them or renaming them for our community meeting, we wanted to leave them with the original numbers that they have. So if anyone's going back to previous meetings, they'll see consistent naming of all of these scenarios. So every time you see a scenario 2 or a 2.1, that one has always stayed the same. So here's our first scenario of the night, the one we've named scenario 2. And the first slide in each scenario is going to show you a zoomed out version of the Crozet Elementary School District and the Brownsville District. The Crozet District is on the northern portion of the map, and that is in that light orange color. The current the scenario 2 Brownsville District is on the southern portion of the map with this light green color. Our next slide will show a zoomed in version of the areas that are being considered in scenario 2 for redistricting. Those include the neighborhoods of Gray Rock, which has 25 current Brownsville students, and these are students who would move from Brownsville Elementary School to Crozet Elementary School next year. It includes the Waylands Grant and Bargaman neighborhood, which currently has 32 Brownsville students. It would include all of Western Ridge, Foothill Crossing, and Wickham Pond over here in this darker orange color that currently has 162 students. And it would include Crozet Avenue from Route 240. It would include Route 240 from Jarman's Gap Road down to Oak Drive. So this kind of northern portion of Crozet Avenue here from Oak to Jarman's Gap Road. Scenario 2 would have 226 current students that are moved from Brownsville to Crozet. And you can see that that would bring, for next year's numbers, Crozet to 536 and Brownsville to 510. For each scenario, there's a demographic impact slide that shows how the proportions of minority students, economically disadvantaged students, and English learners would change under each of these scenarios. While this isn't the easiest venue to go through each one of these, you can link to this presentation on our website if you want to look into those demographic impacts with a bit more detail. So that was scenario 2. Our second scenario is scenario 2.1. And again, here's the zoomed out version with Crozet's boundaries up top and Brownsville's boundaries to the south. You'll see that this is slightly different from 2.1, but still includes the neighborhoods of Gray Rock here, Wayland's Grant, and Bargman Park. It includes all of Western Ridge, Foothill Crossing, and Wickham Pond. And where it differs from scenario 2.0 is that it includes the entirety of Crozet Avenue from Jarman's Gap Road to Route 250. So that brings this number from 7 total students up to 32 total students. That gives us a total number of students moved from Brownsville to Crozet of 253, would bring Crozet's population next year to 563 and Brownsville's to 483. Again, you'll have a demographic impact slide you can see by accessing the presentation on the website. Scenario 3, again, brings Gray Rock and Bargman Park and Wayland's Grant to Brownsville, brings all of Western Ridge, Foothill Crossing, and Wickham Pond. You can see that this goes back to just the northern portion of Crozet Avenue from Oak Drive to Jarman's Gap Road, but then it also includes this area that we've called east of Clover Lawn down to Meacham's River at the train bridge. So basically this is, if you're familiar with the Crozet area, this is kind of coming out of Harris Teeter, taking a right in those neighborhoods that are just east of the Clover Lawn Shopping Center all the way down to the train bridge there. So that brings a total of 245 students from Brownsville to Crozet, and you can see their respective populations of 555 at Crozet and 491 at Brownsville. And our final scenario that we'll share with you tonight is the scenario we've named 4.1. And you can see that this is our largest scenario in terms of students that move. And it takes all of the neighborhoods that you saw there in scenario 3, but adds in Crozet Avenue for its entire length from Jarman's Gap Road down to Route 250. So this moves a total of 272 current students from Brownsville to Crozet, bringing Crozet's population to 582 and Brownsville's to 467. So those are the 4 scenarios that the committee has submitted for public feedback. And now we'd like to hear that feedback from all of you. We've got a protocol set up for giving this. If you've ever watched one of our school board meetings, we follow a very similar protocol to that. We will begin letting speakers into the room in just a minute, and we'll call you in the order in which you signed up. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to address the committee and share their feedback. I'll give a hand signal, just a quick finger in the air when you're down to 1 minute left in your time. And this venue doesn't really allow for interactive comments from the committee to the speakers, but we will take all of the feedback that we hear tonight and from our email and from our survey as we consider the final recommendation that will be made here in the coming weeks. So if you remember that there are many ways to give the committee feedback. One is in person here tonight. Another is to email rac@k12albemarle.org. And finally, we've got our electronic survey that will close tomorrow at midnight. So if anyone wants to complete their survey tomorrow before midnight is the last chance to do that. So I am going to pause there, as that is the end of our opening presentation. And I'm going to ask Lauren to see who's in the waiting room. And is there only one person in the waiting room, Lauren? I think so. So if you're listening to the live stream and you're here to comment, now's the time to move back into the waiting room. And we did have a couple of the first names on our list are names that came to our previous community meeting. So I don't know that they'll be back here again tonight. But Lauren, do you see either Matt Walton, Becky Walton, or Anna Feenan in the waiting room?
I do not.
All right. How about, it looks like there's only 2 people there. How about we, so we've got Ji Yang, I see in there, and Mr. We'll go ahead and, why don't we go ahead and let both the folks in the waiting room in, Even if they're not, I think one of those is signed up, another name doesn't look familiar to me, but we are happy to have public comment from both if they care to give it.
Sure thing. They're on their way in.
All right. So our first public comment tonight will be Ji Yang. Mr. Yang, we are ready whenever you are, and you have 3 minutes to make your public comment.
All right, can everyone hear me?
Yes, coming through loud and clear.
Great, thank you. First, I would like to thank you all for your hard work on this difficult task, and I know that you're investing your precious time in this very important matter that could benefit many people, so thank you very much. I would like to point out the lack of stats on the demography of people who are not white, not African American or Hispanic in the table. And I've sent this email out to that email address, but I do want to mention this again in this live meeting. So from the redistricting slides that we have received and also the slides today, it is clear that there are at least 10% of students who are not accounted for in that race and ethnic table. So for example, if you look at one of the slides, we have about 2.2% Black, 4.4% Hispanic, and 82% white. And so that's roughly about 10% of students who are not included. And I hope this is just a mistake and maybe there's an explanation for this, but it does worry me that those 11 to 10% of students are not invisible in this table, and thus they are invisible in the discussion of redistricting. I would wonder what would be the impact of the students from those groups. So I truly believe that Crozet schools should be a welcoming and inclusive environment, and it start with making sure every student is accounted for. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yang.
Yeah, that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming out tonight. And I see Lucy Dye. Lucy, would you like to make public comment?
Sure. Hi, thank you everyone for giving me the chance to talk about those scenarios. After reviewing those 4 scenarios so far, personally, I would strongly recommend the last one, scenario 4, for 2 reasons. The first one, it will switch more students compared to the other 3, I mean, most population to Crozet, which means we will keep more space for Brownsville. As far as I know, there are some plans for apartments, townhouses in Old Trail, which means the student population will grow pretty fast in the future, who will go to Brownsville. So I don't want to experience back and forth very soon. Hopefully within 10 years, we will not talk about the redistricting again. That is the most important reason why I personally recommend scenario 4. Another reason is about, since we talked about the diversity socioeconomic index of student population, and the last scenario compared to other plans seems to work best for this purpose. That's all my comments. Thank you so much, everyone, for committee members, for all of your hard work.
Ms. Dye, thank you for coming out to give public comment tonight.
Thank you.
And Lauren, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think I see anyone else in the waiting room. Is that right? So we may only have 2 public commenters tonight.
Yes, no one else has come in the waiting room.
All right. So I will begin to wrap things up then. And for those of you listening on the live stream, just wanted to make you aware of our next steps, that you can find this presentation on our website, and the address is k12albemarle.org/redistricting. Our committee is going to get back together again a week from tonight on November the 16th. And at that time, maybe working toward a final recommendation. We hope to be able to present that recommendation to Superintendent Haas on November 29th at 6 p.m. If all goes according to plan there, he will present his recommendation to the board sometime in December at one of the 2 board meetings that take place then. And then our school board will hold a public hearing and take action at one of their meetings in January. So we want to again thank all of the members of the public for coming out tonight, either on the live stream or to the live meeting to make public comment. And before we close things down, just a quick note to the committee. I will be, you had all requested several additional pieces of information around projections and things like that. We are just about ready to push those out into the folder. I think some of them are there already. If you want to go in, we've created a folder within our redistricting share drive that is the, I think it was called additional information since September, or since October 26th. We've got one more piece I think that's waiting to go in around the projections, or Maya, we might have already put that in there. Either way, it'll be in soon. So take a look at that. If there's anything else that you need before our meeting on the 16th, please reach out to me or any of the other staff members on the committee. We'd love for you to have reviewed all that, particularly the projections. I know that that was something that was the committee had some particular interest in seeing. We've put some kind of multiple scenarios in based on current numbers, pre-pandemic numbers, and some numbers that are kind of halfway in between. And we will get back together on the 16th to look at those and hopefully make some final decisions around which scenario to recommend, or to alter one of these scenarios and make that final recommendation to the superintendent. So before we wrap things up, any questions from the committee members, or any things that that we can be working on the staff side for you? All right. Well, thank you again for coming. Oh, I'm sorry, Christine.
Sorry, my internet has just been acting up, but so I don't have my video on. To the commenters' point tonight, do we have what that 10% that's unaccounted for is? Just people who didn't fill it out?
Yes, we can go back in and take a look at that. I'm not sure why that wasn't in there at the start, but we can certainly put that in.
Thank you.
Anything else? All right. Well, thank you again for coming out. Enjoy your Tuesday evening, and I look forward to seeing you all next week. All right.